boss's chair. Is that right, Mr. Darcy? So politics seems to be a theme tonight, so I'm going to do my politics one next. But this first poem's called The Prog. It was 7 hours in the car to Steve to pick up Mum's big brother, Uncle Anthony. He's 5 years older, she said, and he likes to drink. Be down the prog, I shouldn't think. Be drunk as the morning sun, she said, sipping on a glass of wine the night before we'd come. The University Progressive Working Man's Club, a soot-white building with mossy stairs. I looked inside, he wasn't there. He was at home, sat beside the fire with Beryl, 80, still in a dressing gown. They'd never married or had kids. Aunt said Beryl's first was enough for him. He'd become a dad when she was 2, and Mum always talked so fondly of Sue and all she did for Uncle Ant as he drank and smoked, worked down the plant, not 3 miles from their childhood home. He stood still. It's me who's grown. I flew the nest. I took a risk. To better myself, I wanted more than this, she said, pointing at the terraced house, free from the end of the valley's mouth, cabled with a rusty gate and mossy steps, so like the prog in some respects, except the prog had never been a home to Mum and Aunt and Moy, the youngest, now gone. Caught by cancer 6 years ago, Mum's still grieving, can't let it go. I flew 10 hours home from Asia over Europe and then touching down and then hugging her in the arrivals lounge. Mum, I'm so sorry. There are no words. I'm just glad you're here, she said in tears. I cried at Auntie Moy's big bash, and here I was again, black, driving through those snow-capped peaks, alive with death's dancing feet, to park outside the city prog and pick up Ant and take him along to yet another dying day, where black outstripped the floral haze cast upon the mountainside as the sleet gave way to the deep sunshine. Now, the prog, it served beer to the progressive man, so at home, Ant, he drank fruity cider from a can. With Beryl sat across from him, 40 years they'd lived in sin. She coughed. Ant, I'd a beer soon. Aye, he said, and he gazed lazily around the room, which hadn't changed since his mother's time, except at some point they'd put the toilet inside. Best get dressed, eh, said Beryl. Remember to take a hat. It's cold at the Creme. Remember Moy's big bash. Now, I'd volunteered to drive Mum down. I said, let's leave the night before, and as soon as we reached the hotel room, I heard a cork against the floor. The trouble with our Aunt, she said, is he's a funny little man. He drinks, and he smokes, and he swears too much. I saw her shaking hands. It quailed as quick as it had aired, the wine now mixing red on red, soothing her like a swaddling cloth, the suggestive tone of eternal love, and I left early to call back home because I hated feeling so alone. And later still, as I slept deep and sound, the second cork hit the ground. Next morning, in my polished shoes, my black tie, my only suit, I knocked on Mum's door and a smile appeared, crafted over 70 years. And I waited while her face went on, me, the bed and the bottles done, wondering why she couldn't see the things she shared with Anthony. And later still, in the house atop the mossy steps, they talked in shouts because both were deaf. They argued over their mum and dad, and Mum gained an accent she'd never had. And all I could think of was of how these walls must have heard so much of this before, how in this strange but familiar place Mum had lived a life I'd never graced, where girlish thoughts had ruled her days, Moy in tow and in the way, stinging her as big brothers do with subtle love, disguised but true, disguised by tumbling turn of phrase. It's just a joke, my girl, you know my ways. But Mum had run, and Moy had died, and Aunt had drunk and smoked inside the prog with all its sooty walls, its mossy steps and broken doors, and every night, 1 or 2, drinking, smoking, as you do. But Mum had moved so far away, had her house, her choice, her way. Crisp and new and always clean, and like the steps of University, where coal had been the beating heart, until that place had fallen apart, where pubs were full of sooty men, the prog alive and painted then, and Aunt would run and play and hide, the valley black and so alive, and Mum was all just part of it, grown from there to womanhood, forged from what was in those hills, till she fled to the southern spills of commuter belts, and grammar schools, a dyslexic son, and artistic girls, and a marriage that was never whole, and a drink or 2 to help it flow. And as she drank, so did he, in the prog 3:10, greying hair as the days went by, can in hand or a glass of wine. It was Aunt who picked up the phone. Mum was out, she wasn't home, and I tried to make up for it, and I garbled down the phone, "I'm sorry, Aunt, she's not here, but tell me how you been." "Fine, my boy. There's a good lad," he said from the house in earnestly. "It's just, well, there's been some news." And he sounded odd, a little confused. "Tell your mum that May has passed. Died in her bed, Thursday last. The funeral's at the Creme. This Wednesday, 10:30. I told him how sorry I was, how death was such an awful loss, and I promised that I'd let her know, desperate to hand her the phone. So on that day in the valley's lilt, we crossed the bypass newly built, stopped outside the prog just to check, and then funnelled down the valley's neck, parked outside the house last but 3, and climbed the steps that had always been to Aunt and Beryl in the family home, and Mum retired, now on her own, and they turned back time to another life, when neither had yet told a lie. They talked and talked about all they'd known until I had to break it up with. "I'm sorry, it's time to go." It was Mum's cousin who had died, who brought her to the valley's light. But there was something else she was aware, in that cold and crisp December air. Memories of childhood games, of innocence in the valley's gaze. There was something else she was aware had pushed her up those broken stairs, to take her to another death, because soon there would be no one left. Just her and Aunt and the mossy steps, the prog, the house, and all at bed. For the valley life in which they'd grown had disappeared like the pits they'd known. And for just the final throes of life, there were only 2 still left alive. He gripped her tight and she gripped him. And in the Creme they sung that long last lonely hymn, holding hands by each other's side. Uncle Ant and his sister Ide. So I'm going to read this one because that took a long time to remember. So. It seems we're all being visited by UKIP at every stage. I live in Yarmouth, so fucking everyone's from UKIP, so it's ridiculous. So. I got a knock on my door a couple of weeks ago, big fella, and instead of sort of telling him to fuck off right there and then, I did the brave thing and wrote a poem about him. So I'm one of those Paco Rabanne men, obviously, from the start. So here it goes. It's called The Man at the Door. I met a man at my front door, holding a leaflet in his sweaty paw. He grunted a little as his first words came, and without even listening, I knew his game. "Immigrants, those bloody immigrants, they're to blame. They're the reason for the fucking rain. They're the reason I got picked last at school, got called a twat, wasn't cool. They're the reason for my heart attack, my IBS and my fucking back. They're the reason she left me for Trevor and his blue M3. They're the reason the snow don't come with Christmas bells as it once had done. And they're the reason the M4 flows like the water ban on my garden hose. And they're the reason my kids can't read, can't get a job and smoke too much weed. Immigrants, those bloody immigrants, stealing all our food from food banks stocked with Polish soup and honey from those foreign shores, because all the bees are fucked off abroad. It's not that politicians give a fuck, far too busy planning who to fuck down at the old Oxbridge Club where tits and milk are covered up, and then there's all those plastic lumps with Tory brains and Labour rumps tweeting pictures of my place, my flags, my van. It's a fucking disgrace. Imagine judging someone else on petty rules, how they hold themselves, on what they think, the clothes they wear, the van they drive, the flag in the air. I just don't know what it's all coming to. You understand, I know you do. I can see it in your face. It's the immigrants, they're a fucking disgrace. You told me that, I said to him, as he coughed up phlegm, black and grim, fetched his neck from behind his tie and carried on with his lies. You know they take all our jobs, and most of them are fucking slobs, don't pay tax, they're on the dole, that's why this country's in a hole. We should put the fucking walls up, close Heathrow and bar the doors, mine the beaches, put barbed wire down, guard the Queen and guard her crown, stoke the fires and burn them whole. All them foreign books being sold, can't they see this country's full? You understand, you see it all, because we got to keep those fuckers out. His voice was raised and he began to shout, "Immigrants, those bloody immigrants, they're to blame." He hadn't even given me his name. "It's Terry," he said, all in a sweat, his paw a vice with the crushed leaflet. He unfolded it to give it to me, that flowering sheet of obscenity. Despite my lack of political clout, And despite the fact I had little doubt that politicians were mostly frauds seeking out the staunch rewards of a Westminster housing grant for a second home or for their aunt or secretary or bit on the side or the pedal bike they claim to ride, despite my total lack of faith in a system plagued with TV debates and Oxbridge men with rowing oars and Bullingdon clubs and throaty roars, I felt I had to talk to Terry, a man not far from me, from humble means and passionate about the island in which we breathe. Terry, now you told me of all the pain they cause, these evil, spineless thieves of yours, these devils of the blackened night sent on ships and swords alike like the Viking hordes of yesteryear, sent to rape and pillage here. But there's still a question that comes to mind. No, less a question, more a rhyme. For you're spouting shit, and you don't have a clue. The real facts seem to be escaping you. These immigrants with whom you're obsessed bring in tax, they're creating wealth, and not only that, but they're adding to life's tapestry for me and you, be it food, language, music or dress. A culture dies when it comes to rest. If it sits at home with its curtains drawn, how will it see the weather turn? How will it ever come to know when the winter's past and it's time for the seeds to grow? Terry, I don't agree with you. These things you say and these things you do, you seem to be stuck in time, as if you can't see the real crime, the fact that we're in the 1% who don't survive in a perpetual Lent. I mean, do you really think that poverty comes when you don't have Sky TV, that it's cool to blow the cash on drunken nights, on Jaeger bombs and petty fights, and feed upon the toxic growth of Mother Nature's dying boat? Can't you see that these satanic hills can't be cured with morning pills and boats to take them all away, to sink beneath the crashing waves? Our oh so green and pleasant land was built upon the invading man, was crafted by the flowing face that you now claim as a disgrace. So take your leaflet from my door. Go on, Terry, fuck off. I'm so sure. And come back when you've had a think about black and white and green and pink. How colours come in their basest form, mixed as one when the earth was born. How people are just people, a face another face, someone to be kind to. A smile you can't replace. It's a fucked up world, Terry. People are dying all the time. So why not put away your leaflets, put away your lines, and go dig out your garden. Plant yourself a seed. It might just be a flower, not another fucking weed. Thank you.